What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Comic Breakdown. In this video, we are jumping into X-Men Red issue number 15. Genesis and her forces are on the march, but Storm and her forces, they have been doing a relatively good job at holding the lines. In fact, there's actually a map inside of this comic that I'm going to put up right here, right now, so that we can see a little bit of where the lines are drawn. As you can see, this map is the contested territories of Arako. In blue is Genesis. In red is the Brotherhood. In green is the yellow is Iska the Unbeaten, and then there is the gray, which is the uncontested territories. This is what the battlefield currently looks like. But right now, the Brotherhood is preparing for a battle. Port Prometheus is in the sights. They have no doubt that that is where Genesis will attack next. They just don't know how. They assume that this may be by sea, but we have yet to fully understand what Genesis is about to do. One thing is for certain, this battle is going to be a huge deciding factor in what happens moving forward. Now, make sure you guys have subscribed to the channel, make sure that you like this video, and with that being said, let's dive into this breakdown. Alright gang, so as we dive into this issue, it's actually very interesting, because this one actually gives us a story of the Fisher King. The early days, he was born in prison. He had never left, nor was he allowed to leave. But on this day, he finds himself in the depths of Tower of Broken Thought. He is bringing food to what is known as the Mind Ripper, the Dark One, also known as a Zoth. At this point, the Fisher King is only 6 years old. The Mind Ripper had killed the last food bearer, because his power cannot be contained, cannot be bound by any other. But the young Fisher King, he tells the Mind Ripper that he has no power to bind, no weapon at all. The genetic seers say that his power will never come. And the Dark One finds this hilarious, that they would send in someone so powerless. But the young Fisher King knows exactly what could happen here. The Dark One could tear his mind open, flay it alive. A pain beyond pain could cut away his past, his name, everything that he has been, scar his every thought until he becomes unreadable, until he becomes invisible. This is the Fisher King's earliest memory. We can assume by this situation that he had his mind ripped open, that he became unreadable, that his thoughts were so scarred, nobody was able to see him. He essentially became invisible. But as we pick up in present day, the Fisher King, little bit lost in thought, thinking about those early days. But right now, he is about to give the battle plan. Their western front is holding firm. The territories to the east are currently safe. To reach them by land, the forces of Arako Prime, they have to pass between Iska's mountains. They have to pass through the Vial. This is where the locusts of Tarn have established their own twisted realm in the chaos. But they choose neither side, at least for now. And so this leaves only the Autumn continent, mostly dead land after Vulcan's rage. This area is uncontested by either side. And so for Genesis to open up a new front, she has to attack by sea, Sobinar's Sea. This is a route that she has yet to try. This means that Genesis, she is treading very carefully with Sobinar. But now she is going to make that push. And that push, it is going to place it right in the Black King Bay. Deep in the Fisher King's gut, he can feel that this battle is going to take place today. That before the sun sets, the sea will run red with blood. He believes that if they work together, they can win the day. Believing that today is the day that they win everything back. Everything lost, or today will be the day that they all die. This is what jumps us back into the past, back in that prison. The Fisher King is 15 years old. He is a blank spot to the vile omnipaths. He has learned to survive. He has learned to take life, all for this singular moment. This is where we are shown Tarn the Uncaring, the War Child, the Summoner Scion, Apocalypse grandson. And to avoid any confusion, the summoners are the ones with the circle on their chest and the dot in the middle of the circle. This is the grandchild to Apocalypse. As they make their way through the corridors, we have the young Fisher King. Wielding his weapon, he prepares to attack. He plans to kill Tarn the Uncaring, but as he goes to make his attack, this is where a woman by the name of Zora stays his hand. The Omnipaths may not be able to see into his heart, but she can. She is telling him that if he does this, he is going to die. Now, usually Tarn the Uncaring has Iska the Unbeaten by his side. He is taking this opportunity with her not there to try and take him down. There is no better opportunity than right here and right now. But Zora does ask him the question, to what end? To replace him with the next in chain of command. The War Child, the Summoner's Scion, what would you like next? Each of them would welcome Tarn's fall, because they would simply take his place. This would be evil replacing evil. But she is able to convince the Fisher King to not just do this one thing, but let's do many things. Let's find a way to bring this down without doing it this way, because this way, you will die. And so as these two new allies, they try to figure out how to take down Tarn the Uncaring. We pick back up in present day. Genesis and her fleet of ships. They stand on the precipice of battle. They're not too far from shore, but they are just out of range, so that any onshore cannot make an attack. We pick up with a conversation between Sobanar and Genesis. Sobanar is against what is about to go down, believing that they are enough. That the ocean, his ocean, it does not belong to the land. That his children are not Genesis. But Genesis says that this is not a decision for the depths. That they are at war. All defer to the dawn. And since neither side can currently advance by land, this is where she turns to Lycan. She turns to the seat of stalemate. And Lycan the Just, what he says is that following Genesis in all things, this is what we must do. But he is obviously being persuaded by the staff. But Sobanar is not the only one who disagrees. Castor and a few others, they all have some things to say about this. They believe that they should simply make landfall and try their odds. But Aura being the last one to have any say, letting Exotica know that he has the legal permission to proceed forward. Cutting his hand open, he begins to bleed into the ocean. His blood is his weapon, the ever-flowing fountain, the all-nourishment. None of Arako would ever partake of this. This would be a taint of insults. It confers strength. It creates perfection. The Iraqi people may be too proud to drink from him, but a fish has no pride. A sea beast has no honor. And so as his blood drips into the ocean, the sea life begins to feed on it. Feed on each other until only one survives. And this will carry the gift of death to the enemies. As we pick up at Port Prometheus, we see that the keep is still alive and kicking. Peeper is up there and he is holding strong. Getting a bird's eye view, he can see that there are ships headed their way. But this isn't a full force. This is not the whole army. This seems more like a scouting party, or that they are so confident that this small force would be able to overcome them. But Storm does believe that this is to her advantage. That if they are to do a battle over sea, she can create tidal waves that would sink any battleship. Genesis knows this, and so now she wonders why Genesis would bring such a small force. But Genesis brought something even better, and the Fisher King can see this with his eye. He can see it with Xylo's eye. Something about this monster connects to his history, connects to the Fisher King. We see the giant sea beast rise out of the ocean, mutating and transforming even as it rises. And the Fisher King knows that Xylo is trying to tell him something, but their communication isn't as easy as just having a conversation with one another. The worms thread through his bones, his organs flex and writhe. This is where we jump back into the past. The Fisher King is 45 years old, and he holds the seat of nothing. Zora, the spirit of the flame, she holds the seat of nobody. And Zyza the smoke, she holds the seat of nowhere. Right now, they have come before Solemn. Though he may be imprisoned, they have come seeking his help, because in a week, Tarn makes the trek to his vile colleagues. This time, Annihilation will go with him. As protection, the horsemen will ride along, and Iska the Unbeaten for good measure. And they all do this for fear of the White Sword. His 100 can die as many times as Iska can win. Zora believes that this is just too good to be true, that there is something still hidden away that they can't see. Now at this point, the Fisher King married and in love with Zora. He votes with Zora's sister. This chance may never come again. He believes that it is time they take it, saying that Aura will be the first to die. Once out of the law's shackles, the Great Ring can act. They believe that this is their chance, and they have come trying to get the man with adamantium skin to help them out. That with his help, they might be able to win this battle. But as we pick back up in present day, the sea beast making its way right towards Port Prometheus. That is when Storm rises up to the sky, and nobody else sees the need to even raise a finger, as we see the air freeze. In the upper atmosphere, a hailstone forms, the size of the giant monster's skull. And we see this giant iceberg come falling from the sky. It pierces the giant monster right through its skull. In an instant, this giant sea monster is brought down to its knees. An easy defeat. But even with this defeat, the Fisher King, he is still very uneasy. There is something that he is missing, something he cannot see. This is what brings us back into the past. The Fisher King is 45 years old and a day, and they failed. They are now prisoners, with Apocalypse's children now surrounding them, the Annihilation Helm on the face of Genesis. They have come to face their punishment. This is where death brings in the Fisher King's children. The law states that someone must die and someone must live. This is to ensure sending the message that this never happens again, that they will never try again, for this will be the punishment. This is where Zora says she will take it on herself, refusing to let her husband, her beloved, her children die. She swore an oath, one that she cannot break. She swore to protect the Fisher King and her children, even if it meant with her life. In a matter of moments, there is nothing left behind but a skeleton. They believe that the Fisher King has learned his lesson, and they tell the Fisher King that it wasn't Solemn who gave you guys up. Genesis wears the helm. Genesis whispers to plants. Inside of his gut, there is Flora. Genesis spies were inside of the Fisher King, and as they make their exit, his children looking at him, seeing nothing but a weak man. But this is when it clicks in the Fisher King's head in present day. There is a spy inside the giant sea monster. He speaks up. He tells Roberto to burn the corpse, but it is already too late. This is where we have the Okara Gate. Krakoa and Arako can only grow gates half as potent, for this needs no answering gate to link it. Instead, it creates one at the destination. The magic feeds on spilled blood, the sea monster's blood, the blood that they provided. It opens up a gateway to the Ivory Spire and the land of Amith, and the nightmare that is waiting there. This is where we have the Children of Apocalypse, the White Sword and his 100, the Summoners, the entire force, the whole army now descending down on them. They have made landfall at Port Prometheus, and this is where the real battle begins. And that will be the end of this issue. So let me know what you guys think down in the comments. This was beautifully done. This is a modern day version of the Trojan horse, or at least an X-Men modern day version of a Trojan horse. And not to insult anybody's intelligence, but for those that don't know, the Trojan horse was a wooden horse said to have been used by the Greeks during the Trojan War to enter the city of Troy and win the war. One of the most infamous battles in all of history, mostly because it was the first time that it was well documented this avenue, this tactic was used. And this is really a play on that. Now obviously there were no mutants inside of the giant sea beast, but there was a gateway that allowed them transportation from the Spire all the way to Port Prometheus. And this was the plan all along. Genesis knew that they would take down the sea monster. Genesis knew that Storm was more than capable of doing so. But by killing the monster, they allowed the gateway to open up. This allowed for all the forces to now descend down on them. And with their forces already spread thin, they were not expecting a full-on scale invasion right here at Port Prometheus. Which means the battle to come, it does not favor the Brotherhood. It is more than likely they are going to take very heavy losses. But this issue was a lot of fun because of the Fisher King. we finally get to dive into who he is, where he comes from, and what made him the person he is today. Now, this was really a brief history. We jumped from 6 to 15 to 45. Obviously, there's tons of years missing there, but we get an understanding of his upbringing. We get an understanding of where he comes from and what led to his inevitable point of being where he is today. Now, I did make the mistake in the last issue. I had mentioned that it looked like he had a power. Now, for a long time, they said the Fisher King has no powers, and that still holds true. I completely forgot about Xylo as a mutant. But in this comic, we see the Fisher King and Xylo forming together, because the two of them together, they both operate in a much better capacity, both joined together versus being separate. Usually, this is against the Iraqi way. It is seen as a sign of weakness. But we have seen with Storm's arrival, with Krakoa, everything else going on, that the old ways are kind of dying out, while some still hold true to it. There are others like the Fisher King who embrace change, and I think this is one thing that is going to give the mutants of Krakoa an advantage. They are not worried or scared or concerned about using a mutant circuit, where the Iraqi people, them on the other hand, they find it an insult to their very existence. That if you need another mutant to help boost your powers in any way, shape, or form, then it makes you weak. It makes you unworthy. This could be the very downfall of Genesis and her forces. But that doesn't mean that she's not gonna get her punches in. But now that Apocalypse's children have finally made their arrival to the battlefield, the full forces are finally hitting them. This is the true battle. This is where the true war begins. Just like John Ironfire had said. Now the question remains, who of the Brotherhood is going to survive? Let me know your thoughts, let me know your theories. If you would like to get completely caught up on everything going on with this series, go ahead, check out the link in my description as well as the top of this video. It is gonna get you completely caught up on everything going on with this event. If you would like to support the channel, you can always do so by joining the channel membership, much like Patreon, having multiple different tiers, from $1 to $50, from loyalty badges to comics every single month. Not only are you helping out the channel tremendously, but you are getting tons of perks in the process. Now, if you're unable to do this, do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, like this video, hit that notification bell, and with that being said, until the next breakdown.